Have you ever made decisions in Commander that felt really right in the moment, only to realize later that they were absolutely terrible? Yeah, me too. We were both likely victims of our own brains, and something that we're not even consciously aware of: cognitive biases. I'm going to share some of the biggest cognitive biases that are secretly sabotaging your Commander games, so that you can get out of your blind spot and go big brain mode. Firstly, let's make sure we're on the same page with what biases are. They are useful mental shortcuts that generally help us make quick decisions when faced with lots of information. But in providing a shortcut based on some information, they exclude a whole lot. Therein lies the trap, and it often leads us to flawed reasoning and bad decision making. Let's get into how. Number 1, the confirmation bias, or the told you so trap. You're convinced that one player in your playgroup is out to get you and that they always target you. If they so much as look in your direction, you immediately think, "See? I knew it." Your focus shifts almost entirely to fighting that player in particular. Meanwhile, they're just playing the game, and you're ignoring the actual threats elsewhere on the table. This bias makes you hyper-focus on proving yourself right, leading to bad threat assessment, wasted resources, and lost games. Instead, challenge yourself to consider why they made that play. Was it really personal, or just the right move at the time? Keep an open mind, and you might just spot the actual enemy. Number 2, the recency bias, forcing you to relive all your recent pain. Say you got blasted by a Crater Hoof Behemoth last game. So now, every time someone taps a forest, you're warning the table of inevitable hoofbeats and putting yourself behind by holding open mana each turn to have answers to this ghost from the past. Recency bias makes you overvalue recent events, leading to irrational fear of things that might not even be a threat this game. Or on the flip side, it could make you believe your deck is going to pop off again this game, because you won the last one, even though it really sucked for 5 games in a row before that. Instead of living in the past, assess the current board state. Just because it happened before doesn't mean it's happening now. Number 3, the sunk cost fallacy, or the just one more dilemma. You've been setting up this crazy infinite combo for 5 turns. It's been disrupted twice, but you're committed because you've already put so much effort into it. Just one more card or turn, that's what will make the difference. But everyone's watching you like a hungry eagle, ready to stop you in your tracks again. The more you invest in this failing strategy, the harder it becomes to pivot, even when it's clearly not working. Sometimes it's best to just cut your losses. Ask yourself, is this plan or play still winnable? If not, for your own sake, it could be time to try something else. Number 4, the peak end rule, or the high dopamine trap. You had an amazing game where your deck popped off and won in the flashiest way possible. Now you're convinced it's the best deck ever, even though you actually lost the last 5 games before that. The peak end rule tricks your brain into remembering the most intense, or best moment, the peaks, and the final moment, the end, while remembering little else. That one big win is way more memorable than all the quiet losses. Instead of relying on vibes to judge performance, pay attention to actual results. Does your deck consistently perform well? Or are you just chasing that one high from a perfect game? And don't stop there. Evaluate the cards you're putting in your deck in this way, because I am willing to bet that the peaks are clouding your judgment, and your decks are filled with cards that seldom work. When they do, they are high dopamine triggers that leave you chasing the next hit, even if it never comes. Speaking of peaks, if you think this is peak Commander content, like the video, and come hang out in the base deck department Discord. Number 5, anchoring bias, or the early game tunnel vision problem. It's turn 4, and one player has flown out of the gates. Their board is threatening with a capital T. You loudly proclaim that they are the problem, and they're branded public enemy number 1. 20 minutes later, they've been sent back to the Stone Age twice, and their board is empty. But you still see them like they're the biggest threat, despite the fact that they're horribly behind with absurd things happening across the table. Anchoring makes you latch onto first impressions, even when the game state has completely shifted. So keep reassessing. Because the biggest threat on turn 4 might not be the same on turn 10, and that guy flying under the radar who was land screwed suddenly has more mana than you. Your friendships and your win rate will thank you for not dropping anchor. Number 6, the illusion of causal understanding, or I know exactly why that happened. One of your opponents stomps the pod seemingly out of nowhere, or wins with a strong but hard to pull off combo. You immediately think to yourself, wow, their deck is wildly broken, and they must have lied about their power level. Well, not necessarily. This bias makes you confident you know the cause of an outcome when you don't have all the information. In this case, all the factors that led to you getting stomped. It leads to misjudging situations, underestimating opponents' strategies, or blaming power when it was probably something else. Maybe this opponent flew under the radar and was left alone all game, and that, rather than the power of their deck, is why they were so strong that game. Before jumping to conclusions, ask questions. What decisions led to that outcome? Did you miss something? Understanding the real cause of an outcome helps you improve, while assumptions just keep you stuck. Number 7. Loss aversion, or the I can't risk it problem. You're sitting on a key card that can win you the game, but you're terrified to play it because what if someone counters it or removes it right away? This fear of losing value can stop you from making impactful plays and seizing the game when it matters most. Magic is about calculated risks, and at some point in every game, you've got to be willing to take the risk so that at the end of the game, you're not left wondering, what if? Number 8, the availability heuristic, or the that card is busted syndrome. This is a little like recency bias, but not exactly. Say you got absolutely demolished by a Will, Blade of Frontiers deck recently. So now, every time someone plays Will, you're calling for an immediate answer from the table. Bring on the exile effects, the board wipes, the sky's falling. Just because a card was insanely good last time in a very specific situation doesn't mean it's always good and always a threat. Most of the time, Will is just a really good chump blocker. Before you overreact, evaluate the current board state. Is that card actually a problem right now, or are you just traumatized? Number 9. The false consensus effect, or everyone runs this card, right? All your blue decks are filled with counterspells, so you assume every blue deck you come up against is filled with them too. You keep playing around them, with no actual knowledge of whether this specific opponent runs any at all. Just because you do something, or because it's popular, doesn't mean it's everywhere. Assuming other players think like you can lead to bad plays and wasted interaction. Instead of making blanket assumptions, read the actual players and the game you're in. Not everyone builds decks or plays the same way. Number 10. The overconfidence bias, or the I got this misplay. You know how the more you learn about something, the more you realize how little you actually know? Well, that's also true about magic. All of us reach a point where we get a little too confident in our own abilities because we don't know any better. You just know what your opponent has or what they're going to do, only to realize that you were very, very wrong and that you're far worse off because of it. Overestimating your abilities, for example in predicting the game, can lead to unnecessary hesitation or reckless plays that come back to bite you. Sure, trust your instincts, but don't assume you always know. Play the odds, not just your gut. Bonus bias, because it's similar to number 10. Illusory superiority. Game after game, you keep losing, but it's never your fault. Your opponents got lucky, you just didn't draw lands. Or perhaps you were targeted. If every loss is someone else's fault, you'll never improve. Recognizing mistakes is the key to growth. Instead of blaming bad luck, ask yourself, what could I have done differently? The best players learn, adjust, and win more because of it. At the end of the day, Commander isn't just about politics and combos. Like any game of strategy, there's an element of mastering your own mind that can increase your power level far more than some more expensive cardboard. The best part? These biases affect every part of our lives every day, so being more aware of them can improve any part of your life, not just Commander Night. These biases can sneak in and warp your decisions without you realizing it. But now that you know they exist, which of these biases have you or your friends fallen for the most? Or are there other cognitive biases you know of that apply to magic? Thanks for watching.